Hey, Internet. Oh, wow. Didn't sound good there. I know I said I wasn't going to stream today, and then it kind of in an ironic turn of events, sometimes this happens when you read the Bible. The text that we were looking at this morning on my radio show, Sharper Iron, was fairly pertinent to what I've been talking about the last couple of days. It was Genesis chapter 34, often known as the defiling of Dinah, right? Dinah was a daughter of Jacob, a sister of the 12 sons of Jacob, who we know now as the tribal leaders of Israel, guys like Reuben and Judah, and particularly the sister of Simeon and Levi, and actually Reuben and Judah as well, because they all come from the same mother, Leah. So she, at some point, and we're not quite sure how, is away from the family and ends up being raped. She is taken by a young man named Shechem, and he is the son of a king. Now, king doesn't mean quite like we would think, like Charlemagne, right? It's like a city-state, and the king's name is Hamor. And the fallout from this is that Shechem, after doing this, still wants her, right? Wants her to be his, and so he gets his father to come and try to seek, well, in the powwow, in the meetup to seek justice, where Jacob and his sons are pretty angry about this. The father Hamor and Shechem seek to marry the daughter and form an alliance. This leads to a number of things, and you can ask about in the show that we did on KFUO. Definitely does ask about what did Jacob and his sons do wrong by not seeking justice? Because clearly they did not seek justice for the daughter. Instead, they end up forming an alliance and a marriage, although the sons do seek justice, but against the will of their father, when they convince the whole town that in order for this marriage to happen, they have to be circumcised, which they know is going to make them be kind of ill and sick for 3 days as they deal with a little maybe infection and the recovery. And then when everyone is sick and ill, Simeon and Levi go into the town and they just slaughter everybody. They take all the stuff. They take all the women as slaves, effectively, and take them with them, which we can't really say, well, that was good, right? There was vengeance, but there was not justice in this. The worst part of all of it is that not just that they did that, but that they used circumcision to do that. And circumcision is not just any old thing, any old ritual. This is the covenant. I mean, there is no Sinai, there is no temple, there is no Ark of the Covenant. There is circumcision. This is the promise of God for grace to the world, and they use that to murder people. So it's really kind of an awful thing. As a result, the line of the covenant is going to pass over Simeon and Levi and to Judah. Reuben still has to be dealt with. He has a similar, not quite the same issue that comes up later, that his firstborn causes it to leave him. So what I thought, though, was so valuable about this conversation, aside from the fact that clearly the Bible does teach that this kind of behavior is wicked and evil, right? And that you can go further into Deuteronomy, chapter, now I don't have it off the top of my head, I think it was 25, in Deuteronomy, where even the punishment for rape in Israel was to kill the rapist, but nothing was to be done to the girl. She was to be treated as completely innocent in the matter, and it compares it to murder. This is like murdering somebody. That's Christianity's point of view on this topic, right? That if it's done to someone, you've effectively murdered them. You've stolen their entire life. They will still live, but their life will be stolen from them, and there's like no way to really escape. And this is where the young lady in the Netherlands clearly was an example of this, right? That her own words, she's experienced this, that just, it dominates everything. And so there is that, and that it's good to see and remember that Christianity teaches against this. We push our morality on others by saying that sexual sin is wrong, rape being a sexual sin. Yeah, and what then I find really interesting is, where is the line drawn? So this one is still called wrong by the culture, but for how long, right? For how long? I don't want it to change. I would like us to have all virtues be promoted. I don't think that we should go to the death penalty for everything either. Like, don't hear me saying that, right? But what it got me thinking is, isn't it interesting that we have this thing called the Me Too movement and the concern about rape culture, which I'm not going to pretend it's not out there. It's, for all I know, it is. Probably is, right? Not probably. I'm going to say it is. It's out there. And it's wrong. College campuses, businesses, Hollywood for sure. They want to yell about it, but they also are doing it, right? So it's out there. What I'm curious about historically, if we're going to say it's like increasing or it's rising or anything like that, wasn't that interesting that along with the increased teaching that there is no God, there is no absolute truth, There is no real virtue. All morality is somebody's construction and opinion that's forced upon them, and we have to throw all of these things off. And oh, by the way, you're just a monkey, right? I know Darwinists, don't get mad at me. You're right. We're not monkeys in your system. In your system, we're related to monkeys. But, we're just atoms that floated around and became wild beasts, right? So you teach that to a generation and a half of humans, and then you're like surprised when they act like animals and do awful things and don't care about whether it hurts other people. And Christianity's over here and you're like, they're the hateful ones. We're actually shouting like, don't do evil to people. It's wrong. it hurts them. It's bad, right? Don't destroy. Yeah. And certainly in this case, when we say respect marriage, we mean, don't rape people. That's awful, right? That's what marriage is about, is not that, right? But instead, forming a union of a man and a woman that is infidelity and for the good of the other. And that's why it's for life. It's because it's always for good. The goal is for good. Yeah, we're all sinners, so we're imperfect in these marriages, but the goal is for good. And one of the things that Pastor Brian Flammy said that I thought it was just fantastic how he said it. He said, it's the disintegration of the patriarchy that has led to a rape culture. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, right? Because the Me Too movement is against patriarchy. Feminism is against patriarchy. It's like calling someone a Nazi almost, right? You don't even have to explain what you mean by it. You can just say it, and then that person can't talk anymore. Well, what is patriarchy? I'm going to make an advocacy here that the idea of patriarchy is that we should have a culture of protection. That there should be individuals who have a role, whether it's in a family or in a city or in a nation, and that role is to protect. That role is to be a father to the people. Now, whether they actually are the father or not, now I think the father, physically, the one who is the father, has been given to do this and should do it like it's commanded. You should protect, right? But whether that is true or not, a culture of protection, one that believes that authority is there for the sake of protection, that's the definition of patriarchy, biblically speaking. Right? Now, I don't know about, medieval what have you, right? I'm sure there's all sorts of abuses of it. And of course, evil people get a hold of power and they abuse it, of course, right? But is the answer to get rid of protection? Or to get rid of the belief that there are those who inherently ought to be protectors? And that's a virtue? To protect is a virtue? And so you're going to get rid of that idea that there are those who we should just teach, you need to be a protector. Your job is to protect. All little boys should be taught, protect. Right? Or stop doing that. That's patriarchy. And then they're going to grow up animals as they are, and they're not going to protect them. We're like, oh, why don't they listen? Why are they so awful? Well, we taught them not to be virtuous. We said that it was wrong to be virtuous. What do you want them to do? They're just going to do what you teach them to do. The world that we have is the one that we built. Huh? And you can shout about how it's Christianity's fault, but Christianity has not been building this culture for, 30, 40, 50 years at least. In terms of really impact. I mean, you show me where the show from the 1970s was really promoted. Pick out one. What 1970s TV shows were like really pressing Christian virtue, right? Oh, there's a miniseries on Jesus at Easter. That doesn't count, right? There is no promotion of the Christian worldview in this country for publicly and pop-wise for decades upon decades. So don't blame us for this. This is what we built. It's what you built, right? So, and I'm saying, like, if you're going to build it in such a way that there is no virtue, then don't expect people to be virtuous. And if you want people to be virtuous, then you must teach virtue. And to do that, you do have to have a moral standard, an authority that exists, and a reason for that virtue. Now, with that said, too, then the other issue that really concerns me about the Me Too movement, so constructed, because I'm not concerned about speaking out against rape. Like, we absolutely should do that. What I'm concerned about is then the equating of that in order to speak out against rape, you must also call out toxic masculinity. And by calling out toxic masculinity, you don't really mean calling out that masculinity which is toxic. Generally, it means attacking masculinity, right? It means assuming that all men are the problem because there are some evil men. And this gets to a very common habit that we have as humans, which is that we see that something's being abused, and we decide that the answer to stopping that abuse is to get rid of the thing. people shoot people with guns. Get rid of the guns, right? It's that simple, right? Well, kings abuse their power. Get rid of the kings. Well, we'll have votes. That'll fix it. The voters abuse their votes. We'll have a electoral college. Oh, the electoral college abuses its power. We'll go to pure democracy, right? The answer always seems to be, it's like a knee-jerk reaction. Get rid of the thing. Rather than recognizing that maybe it's not the abuse that is the actual substance of a thing, that the thing has a good use, but the abuse is the thing that must be wrong and must be taught against. So it's not about get rid of guns. It's about teach people how to respect and understand and properly, virtuously use guns. And you say there's no virtuous use of guns. You know what? Have you ever just shot at a target and learned the discipline of figuring out how to do something that's hard and takes effort? I mean, that alone is a virtue. It creates a work ethic, right? If you like teaching people to play basketball, there's no reason not to have them shoot bow and arrow. There's no reason not to have them shoot a gun. So just don't tell me there's no use for them. In shooting food, obviously, is a use for them. And I would say it's good that police officers have guns, even though you want to take away guns and then you want the cops to have them, but you think all the cops are bad. It's also crazy. Whatever, that's politics. The abuse does not negate the use. Because authority has been abused does not mean there is no good authority. Because guns are abused does not mean that there is no good use for a gun. Because men have been abusers, that does not mean that all men are bad. Not in that way. Not in that sense. Not all men are abusers. And it does not mean that masculinity is the problem. Masculinity is the answer. If you want men to be good men, they need to be good men. Not whimpering, little, sniveling, selfish, useless, undutiful piles of blob. They have to be taught to stand up straight, to look you in the eye, shake your hand, and protect. Because that's what they want to do. As boys, that's what they want to do. And you want to stop rape culture? Then we got to teach the boys to be protectors, which means we got to teach them to be men, to be different, to stand up. Yeah, and to me that's a huge, huge issue. We need to speak out against the abuse of women, and the way to do it is by raising good men, raising good Christian men. All right, cool. Headed to that Issues Etc. Making the Case conference today. If you're in Chicago, you should come check it out. And if you have not subscribed, liked, or commented on this video and or others, please do so. It helps get everything out. You can find redfist.com below. You can find my Patreon page and stuff below. And the recent podcast also came out. You can find that at redfist.podbeam.com. Good morning, everybody. One moment. I'll look at your comments here. Thank you very much. Cool. Glad to be back and whatnot. You're welcome, Carolyn, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to try to broadcast something tomorrow. It probably won't be live, but we'll keep this thing going. Yeah? Rock on.